like, I did this video on TikTok where I talked about all of these things that Labour are similar to the Conservatives with and why I was voting for the Green Party. I had a lot of people in the comments saying things like, well, I don't support the Green Party because of this one specific policy. And I find it really frustrating because there's always going to be political disagreements you have with other political parties. And if you don't like them, you'll find a reason not to vote for them. And the thing is that there are plenty of disagreements I have with most political parties. I disagreed with Corbyn over his Brexit position and the single market, for example. I disagreed with Ed Miliband on loads of things, and I currently disagree with the Green Party on lots of things. But it's not the fact that the certain positions I disagree with. It's the broader strokes on policy and ideological frameworks for the policy platforms that they take. But whilst we're here, I do think that it's worth that we should discuss what I have criticisms of the Green Party for, because they aren't great. Like, they're really not great on certain issues. Like, there's kind of three kind of main strands of the Green Party's policy platform that I have a real problem with. First of all, that they don't back nuclear as a climate change solution. Now, I get why environmentalists dislike nuclear power, and I understand all of their reasons, and I know that it's not technically necessary for a green transition. It's just, my specific point on nuclear is that I don't think that it is politically feasible to get a green transition through without relenting on nuclear power. I really don't think that you can properly force through enough support for green politics and green construction, like on wind farms and solar farms and hydropower, or I guess it would be tidal power in the UK, or like geothermal. I don't think you're going to be able to get enough planning permission, nor enough public or local support or community support for all of the necessary infrastructure that you need to rely on a green transition that doesn't have at least some backup on nuclear power. So one of my main disagreements, and that's one of the biggest, actually the number one criticism that I found in my TikTok comments on the Green Party specifically, was around nuclear power. And I 100% agree with these criticisms. I just, does that something that I have in my head above things like council housing, things like the support for deregulation of the financial sector, or the lack of a wealth tax, or taking money from rich donors, or support for first past the post, or the 2-child benefit cap, or on like monetarist fiscal policy, or on what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Like these are all issues that are far more important to me than whether or not you support nuclear specifically as part of your green transition. But the Green Party is democratic. There was already an internal group called Greens for Nuclear Energy, and if you want to support them and you want to move the party's position on this, you can change the party's position by becoming a member and changing them democratically, which you can't do in the Labour Party. They've already put a complete stop, a kibosh on internal Labour Party democracy on policy. So you don't get that, at least. But, I have this very specific criticism around nuclear power. Now, something that's kind of linked to this, because I think one of the reasons why that they specifically have this anti-nuclear power plan in place, it's partly because of the risks ecologically to what it could potentially be in a time of a lot of climate turmoil that could lead to adverse weather effects and things like that, which could potentially undermine the safety of nuclear power. A lot of it is due to the fact that people just don't want to build the actual things near where they live. You know what this is, folks? We've all heard this before. I talk about them on chat all the time. It's NIMBYism, the second problem with the Green Party. So many NIMBYs everywhere. You cannot get around how NIMBY-ish the Green Party are. Whether or not you think that they're doing it for their own personal finances, whether you think that they're doing it because they just want to ensure that they don't have to deal with what might happen to their own personal finances because of any construction in their area, like their property values, for example, or how they want to protect their own green spaces rather than somebody else's, or whether it's like a broader point around protecting the green space that we do have. The issue is that we live in a fantasy world, right? We live in a fantasy world if we think that we can be politically relevant whilst not building things. There is a much larger consensus for continued increases in prosperity and access to infrastructure and access to amenities and access to all of the different benefits of industrialism than there is for broadly getting rid of all of that to support the maintaining of green spaces. And you have to cut some kind of gap between the two, which is why I support having a plan for high density construction of things like housing. The Greens charter the most called right homes, right place, right price. And one of their right place caveats is ensuring that the infrastructure is there to actually take account of the fact that you're increasing the housing stock and the housing supply. What that sounds like to me, whilst I think that's reasonable, we do have a problem where we build loads of houses and not the infrastructure to take care of it, like hospitals and schools and all of these things, is that it sounds to me that given what we know about the NIMBY-ish part of the Green Party platform, is that this caveat of needing the infrastructure will be used by local Green parties, which are different from Westminster Green parties. That's another thing that was brought up in the comments, of the difference between local Greens and Westminster Greens, which are a different kettle of fish, is that I think that this caveat can be used to block construction. Like, it's very, very frustrating to have to deal with these NIMBY types, because whilst I understand why people would want to keep green spaces, everybody has to make sacrifices to access these things. If we want to have a carbon neutral future, we're going to have to build lots of the green transition. It's going to have to go somewhere, and we need to be able to actually spread that cost amongst everybody. We can't just have certain people in certain communities blocking everything, like the Greens blocking an electricity substation for offshore wind power. This thing that is necessary for the green transition, that drives me up the wall. It absolutely drives me up the wall that these blocking things happen. And when the Green Party in Germany are losing huge amounts of political capital, their poll numbers are absolutely tanking, and it's specifically because people fear Greens as being a block on prosperity, right? They fear Greens as being the people who are going to stop them from having better jobs or having more disposable income, because they feel like they're cutting away a German industry, for example. And these are all things that I think you can do in a climate conscious way. I mean, I am climate conscious. I am a member of the Green Party after all. But you can't just block everything and assume that you can have a green transition. You need to build trains. You need to build green power. You need to build new, affordable, high quality, highly insulated, environmentally friendly homes, which are high density, and you can't build too few of them. And you need all the infrastructure around them as well. You can't just block construction of these things forever, and it's infuriating that Greens don't recognise this. It's infuriating they don't recognise this. Again, I support broadly the policy platform, but unless you can actually tell me we are going to build these things and this is our part of the green transition, you're not just going to lose my vote or my support overall, or you're going to make my view of you be more negative. You're going to cost yourselves votes overall, because people will see what happened with Annalena Baerbock, who had the Greens support the removal of nuclear power, the removal of these industries, the removal of these jobs, which took away prosperity from the country. And that is the biggest gap between Green Party policy and getting people to vote for you, is this idea that you're going to cost them certain amounts of prosperity in the future. And we need to make the positive case, just like Labour were, the positive case for green investment, for good green jobs and good prosperity. That should be the position that we should be taking, that Labour have now abandoned. And that's what we should be doing. That's exactly what we should be doing to win the political war, to generate more political capital, and to ensure that we can show to people that green growth is possible, that green growth can be used to increase living standards for everybody whilst protecting the climate and managing a green transition. We should be positively making that case, rather than allowing people who don't want there to be extra homes near their area to be able to block any planning permission moving forward. This is the key point here out of all of this, I think. The third position, the third thing that the Greens do that they need to change, is they need to focus on class politics. They need to focus on class politics very, very specifically. It's a very middle-class party at the moment. It's a very middle-class party at the moment, probably because they have a lot of support in rural areas. But you need to be able to make, again, the positive case for class politics in this country. There's already a green trade union group. There's an eco-socialist group. We all have policies. We know that their policies support working-class desires, things like universal basic income, wealth redistribution, the support for council housing, all of these things, cooperative ownership, the trade union movement, all have support within Green Party policy. It never gets communicated. It never gets communicated because they focus too much on their core mission of environmentalism over what they can do positively for working class communities. And they have to get away from being this middle-class single-issue party to actually focusing on class issues. There was a moment when Carla Denyer was on the flagship Laura Kuenssberg show, and she was asked about why representation was bad in government and how that stopped us having a proper framework for responding to the coronavirus pandemic. And she was like, well, actually, there weren't enough women who were in the cabinet office or who were in number 10, so they didn't get enough perspectives from women in how that COVID policy would affect them. This is 100% true, by the way. This is actually 100% true. But there's also another group that wasn't represented either, and that's working class people. You know, Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak not understanding that poor people don't have gardens that they can go in during lockdown. And this is a point that she could have made very, very clearly, and she did not. She did not. And as I said, the policies are all there. The policies are all there to show that we can support these people. And they don't get mentioned enough. I know Zach has been good at talking about unionisation and the positive case for the worker economy, and that's good, that's fine, but it needs to be the central message. The central message needs to be good green jobs for everybody to get access to increase living standards for all of us, to increase the availability of public transport so that we can, remove our dependency on cars, for example. And on top of that, all of these redistributive measures and how they're going to help everyday regular individuals, how they're going to be able to fix these problems. And unless they can positively communicate to these people, there's a huge swathe of voters that they won't win. Because, again, it is a middle-class party at the moment, and that is something that doesn't need to be, because we all know that their policies are pro-working class in nature. But there has to be a top-down change in rhetoric, a change in positioning, a change in messaging and communications to be able to actively put that forward to the public. Because otherwise it's just going to seem like the concerns of people who aren't actually positively affected by their changes that the Green Party wants to make, which isn't true, by the way. There are loads of people from working class backgrounds, from poorer backgrounds, who all are members of the Green Party and campaign with the Green Party for all of the things that they have in their manifesto, which are going to support the trade unions, that are going to support wealth redistribution, they're going to support our public services, they're going to support the creation of a fairer and more equitable economy. But it never ever reaches the discourse. It never reaches the discourse because they get pigeonholed into a certain level of middle class environmentalist stuff. Because environmentalism is not a middle-class issue. It's an issue that everybody cares about. It's a position that everybody cares about and everybody engages with. We're one of the most pro-climate countries in Europe, yet people don't vote for the Green Party because of it, because of the perception. And that can and should change. I think Zach Polanski's done a really good job of putting that forward to people, and I think that people like Carla Denyer need to get on top of that rhetoric as well around how we're going to be helping like the lower off communities in our society, because they can do it. Council housing is a big one. Council housing, because they already have a promise to build 150,000 council houses as part of their plan for government. This should be front and centre of their messaging. Should be talking about council housing. Do we actually get any messaging on this? Very, very rarely. Very, very rarely. So that is my prospectus for a change in direction for the Green Party, outside of all of the plenty of other things that I agree with on what they do. These are the sticking points that I have, and I'm sure loads of other people have as well. Something for, if Zach or somebody watches this, something to ruminate on, because again, I was a member of the party, I support the party, but these issues I think we need to have a think about. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description, and if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.